And we are live. How's it going, everyone? I'm here with a couple members from the AscendEX exchange, one of the mtnDAO sponsors, actually. Super excited to have you guys on. It'd be great to just introduce yourselves for anyone who's not aware.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here. My name is Scott Byron. I'm our head of research and venture at AscendEX. So dealing with a lot of our listings and investments for AscendEX, it obviously spans across the entire exchange landscape. And so it's really just one part of what we're doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my name is Jack. I'm director of launch at AscendEX. So that's mainly focusing on all new listings, really just walking them through, discovery process, then onboarding, and ultimately listing them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great to have you guys on. Also, just awesome for you guys to be here as well. Love meeting people in crypto in person. Also, shout out for the awesome merch. Looks like you guys got it on lock there. So super excited for that. And just to get into it, do you guys want to outline what really AscendEX is, their goals, and the role you guys play in the ecosystem?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I think the exchange landscape in crypto, specifically the centralized exchange landscape, is very, very competitive, right? There's hundreds, I think almost like 500 centralized exchanges competing at this point. And for us, it's really a matter of how do we bring the most amount of products into retail's hands, right? A centralized exchange user with most of their interactions is going to be less sophisticated than DeFi. DeFi users are able to directly interact with smart contracts, whereas a centralized exchange user may not be as comfortable. They may not want to deal with things like self-custody either. And so AscendEX really looks to bridge a lot of those DeFi native services, be it lending and borrowing, liquidity provisioning, really those other, say, structured products into the centralized exchange users' hands.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it makes a ton of sense. I mean, a lot of retail, if you're not into Web3 and crypto, can be pretty daunting. And so people coming over from something like Robinhood or like TD Ameritrade, it looks like it is the happy median between those things where users can have an intuitive UI, not have to worry about, like you mentioned, self-custody. So I think that's great. Kind of building off what you said, you mentioned how the exchange landscape is very competitive. I'm curious, what does AscendEX do that tries to set them apart and differentiate from other of these exchanges?
Absolutely. And so in that vein, right, we try to work with the widest variety of projects and protocols that we can. Our mission and mandate is really to bring and open the floodgates for retail to whatever DeFi and whatever the crypto Web3 ecosystem offers. So really working hand in hand to bring new mainnet integrations live is something that we've done even since 2019. We were along the initial launches of Thorchain, Akash, Persistence, even more recently. And so I think that giving those more esoteric projects or implementations even that same interface with centralized exchange users is very important, and continuing to do so even more recently, things like Polkadot auctions, that even would, I'm sure, grow into things like layer 2s as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and it makes sense. It kind of even touched on that just with your guys's real focus on making sure users are able to access some of these things like DeFi and other things of that regard. And you guys notice that you guys are doing a lot of things, listing a lot of assets. I'm curious, what is the vetting process behind that? What do you guys look to do on your guys' end to just make sure that you are attracting some of the more quality projects in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so ultimately, I think that our vetting process is pretty stringent, right? We look at a lot of different things. I think that ultimately we want to find projects that are offering something unique to our users. I think that when we look for a project, really look for a project that we can be a strategic partner to, right? We look to be able to integrate on-chain, right? Things like staking, for example, right? We'll actually spin up our own nodes. Really just finding ways that we can bring, fundamental values from projects to our users in a way that's a little bit different, right? Finding, projects that maybe aren't listed on other exchanges, and really just, giving our users as much as we can from our perspective.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And something that is just very common here is your guys's integration and really knowledge of the Web3 landscape, what's happening with all these smart contract networks. And I'm curious, just looking at it from AscendEX's view, it looks like you guys are pretty chain agnostic. What is the outlook of this? I mean, there's so many different things. I guess the big thing I'm seeing right now is even in times of super high congestion, all networks are filling up. So there's obviously not enough scaling. So having multiple of these networks makes sense. What is AscendEX's stance on this? Where do you guys see this going? Do you think technology will start to condense to a few chains, or is it something where there's a lot of innovation to be had here? And just in general, I mean, I think the wide array of assets starts to speak for the thoughts on this, but curious to hear some more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately we like to remain chain agnostic, right? Being at mtnDAO, obviously we worked very closely with the Solana ecosystem. So we did things like the Serum IEO, Bonfida maps. Been with Solana for a while, and now it's really just okay. What other ecosystems can we find, right? What other ecosystems are projects beginning to build on, things along that nature. And really kind of also listening to the community and what do our users want at the end of the day, right? So I don't think that it'll necessarily condense. I think that ultimately the types of projects and what people are building is just getting cooler.
Yeah.
Like, it ranges from, metaverse and play to earn, which we see a lot of, to different types of structured finance products, right? So I think that's really where you'll see things grow versus things like, different chains and things growing and shrinking in that sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Just really looking across the entire landscape, saying, okay, it doesn't necessarily matter what chain it's on, is the actual product or DApp that they're building innovative, useful, doing something exciting. So I think that's an interesting take on it. And you can also just see that in the way you guys are listing things. I mean, we were talking yesterday and I was just getting an idea because this is something we've been thinking more about on our end at Salon News, BSC News, and now what'll more formally be known as Web3Y, or just what chains we want to focus on. And it's a very similar answer. It's more so there's so much innovation across all of these, and being able to get access and cover news on them, and in your sense, more so get access, is just immense for the users.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And just moving forward, how have you guys, I mean, it looks like you guys are doing it pretty well, and you touched on it a little bit, spinning up nodes, working on staking. How has it been with AscendEX coexisting alongside layer one networks, smart contract networks? What is the real like relationship between these two? How have you guys been able to leverage these things?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because ultimately, again, we're providing what we like to refer to as a bridge into the ecosystem. So I think we believe that this is very symbiotic, right? At no point do I think centralized exchanges are the only people interacting or tapping or calling these smart contracts. But in order for some retail users to actually get to those contracts, we do have to integrate them. And so for us, however we can work with projects themselves to say, are we vetting the contracts the right way? Are we delegating assets in the proper manner? Are we upgrading infrastructure? All those are very minute details that ultimately improve the UX of retail users. So increasing those sorts of things is important, but then also working to say what are the newer types of contracts that we can bring into the ecosystem too. So as Jack mentioned, things like interest rate swaps and more esoteric financialized products are shown to be something that we're looking to do as well.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and just a testament to show that is like you guys have your head down in the ecosystem. You guys are really looking at what's building, and it shows, right? You guys are here at mtnDAO, one of the sponsors. I'm curious, have you guys been to any other crypto events like this? If not, what's the read on something like a Hacker House, mtnDAO, other of these Solana hacker houses, even things like ETH Denver? What is the outlook of those on the ecosystem in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to touch on that. I think that ultimately going to something like mtnDAO or the different hacker houses, you really get to see what's happening within the ecosystems, right? You really get to see what's being built. You get to see how excited people are, which I think is part of the fun, right? Everyone kind of comes together behind like a similar goal. Ultimately, we were in Lisbon for the Solana conference there. We went to Mainnet in New York. We'll be hitting a lot of different conferences this year, which, from my perspective, I think is great. I think that, as COVID obviously lifts slightly, we can do more face-to-face interactions with people. And that's really how I think you get to build relationships. Ultimately, I think that what we found is that it really is a relationship game. Like, crypto is obviously getting bigger and bigger by the day, but ultimately it's still pretty small. Yeah. So just by meeting other people and meeting new people, right, you just continue to grow your own circles. And ultimately, I think that coming to something like mtnDAO has just showed me what kind of, cool different types of protocols that people are really building.
Yeah, that's super exciting there. And just staying on this idea of how many protocols there are, how many people there are building, it is still a small space, but I think in the past year and a half, we've seen an immense amount of projects come up and start building dApps on layer one smart contract networks. How has this looked for listing activity at AscendEX? It seems like there's a new token, a new asset every day. How do you guys handle the flow? And what's just like the general outlook on all of this innovation coming into the space?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to stop. I think it's ultimately just, how can we continue to adapt, right, and just keep ourselves nimble in that sense. I think that we have a great team, back in our offices. I think that we're all really on the same page and we're all working towards the same goal. And ultimately, when you have a team like that, that's really how we'll be able to move quickly with different types of dApps. And we'll sometimes talk to a project and they want to list tomorrow, or they want to list yesterday, right? So how can we continue to make inroads within our own company to be able to keep up with that, right? So I think that that's going to be really key for us, is continuing to grow headcount, continue to grow our brand, things along that nature. That'll just continue to help us ultimately keep interacting with these different protocols, keep interacting with these different projects, and ultimately be able to move quickly enough to actually work with them in the time that they need us to work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that was just like a great overview of what AscendEX is doing, how you guys differentiate, and really how you guys are looking to interact with where most of the innovation is in crypto now. And I'm referring to these layer one smart contracts. I mean, we've seen how well some of the largest tokens have performed. I'm curious, and maybe not even in the sense of like AscendEX's stance, but just to open it up a little bit, like what's the general market sentiment overall? Like, what are the thoughts on that with everything going on wild in the macro environment? What's sort of the in the field's crypto thesis? And then I'll take it another step further and open it up to something a little more fun.
Yeah, I mean, as all of us get chopped up right now, it's been quite miserable. I think we all can agree. It's really important for AscendEX and our mission to allow users to really do more with their assets. So to continue bringing on yield generation programs, right? To continue offering ways for users to extend the lifetime value of their dollar, of their stable coin. Even sometimes we can use more esoteric altcoins for that type of stuff as well, and really get them involved from a financialized side. At that point, I think the macro markets are going to dictate quite a bit, but for what we can do, that's where we're starting, and we'll continue to innovate there.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. A big thing I like to think about is, like you mentioned, a lot of these earning yield and products like that are awesome, especially in this high inflation environment where a big thing that people are looking for is, how do I beat this inflation? Even if it's something small like taking interest on their stables. So just continuing to expand that suite. I mean, it's not like we can change anything that's going on macro wise, but at least having these yield bearing opportunities is pretty sweet. So I think that's cool. And then another thing, I was just scrolling through AscendEX Twitter before this, as I should be. And I saw you guys were doing just some fun NFT giveaways. What's the general thing there? Do you guys have NFT support? What is the overall outlook on the NFT market?
They're undoubtedly right. A very big part of the ecosystem this year proved that more than any time before. There's no native support right now. If you were to say, ERC20 wallet support for 721s or 1155s, it's something that, of course, we're very excited about. So we try to preview that with giveaways. I think that we'll have more announcements coming out in the next couple of months, or hopefully maybe even the end of the quarter. For us, again, we're trying to open the floodgates to as much as we can in that Web3 environment, and NFTs are merely one piece. I think we will see growth with the financialization of them as well.
Yeah, I really think it's just unique how AscendEX is positioning itself to really come in and leverage things like these smart contract networks. As especially in my end, I really got into crypto DeFi 2019, and just most of what I know of crypto is things like DeFi and NFTs. So to see that that's something you guys are focused on, really, it's exciting to see that you guys are differentiating in that. And in my opinion, is one of the more, and is where most of the innovation in the space is. So this starts to wrap up everything I have. I'm curious, just overall general, what is something, maybe we'll keep this more Solana ecosystem just on the path of mtnDAO. What is something in Solana that next 1 to 5 years, bigger picture things that you guys are excited for to see develop as more and more people come to the space, more talent, more funding, more innovation?
I think, yeah, I mean, we could both probably give something here. We come at it from different sides. I'll take sort of the financial side of things, right? I think what Serum's primitives introduced from a central limit order book perspective, being in a centralized exchange, are very interesting, right? They improve capital efficiency in many regards for the markets themselves and applications that build financial products on top of them, AMMs, lending and borrowing, et cetera. I'm really excited to see how that continues to innovate, specifically in the derivative space. I think that the derivative derivative protocols even that are here building some at mtnDAO. Really exciting things, and definitely.
Awesome.
And I mean, I think I'll try and give a different answer than Scott. I mean, I think that NFTs and using Sol versus ETH, right? There's obviously a very different layer of barriers to entry. So I think that that's something that'll definitely kind of be a huge like sticking point for Solana. Things like Sol Pay or even mtnDAO Pay, which we saw the congressman use yesterday here.
Yeah.
Things like that. It would be pretty cool to see that take more mainstream adoption. Right, it'd be awesome if I can, open up my wallet and use USDC or something and be able to buy a chocolate bar, right? So I think we're just pretty excited to see, kind of like what you touched on, also the amount of talent and the amount of devs that are just keep building and joining the Solana ecosystem doesn't seem to be going away.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see what is continuing to be built here.
Yeah, those are both awesome takes. I mean, the idea of derivatives and central limit order book, like that's been massive, and I think that is a big thing to attribute of the talent coming in. And then just the NFTs. I mean, this is right up my alley, but just the lower fees and seeing also this same talent is coming in there. You have things like gaming popping up. And so it's just exciting overall seeing the Solana ecosystem really come in with a great base layer of technology and starting to slingshot in all of these different sectors that are popping up. And that really wraps it up for me. I think the big thing here was just learning more about AscendEX, how you guys differentiate, how you guys are looking to interact with the ecosystem. I think this is something that has become very big, especially in the past year. How do centralized exchanges interact with this Web3 more decentralized landscape at the protocol level? And it seems like AscendEX is very focused on that. So I want to thank you guys for coming on, and it's been great in general. So that wraps it up for me. Don't know if you guys have anything else you want to tack on to that.
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Definitely.
really appreciate it.
It's been awesome having you guys on, and definitely